Not allowed to leave the table till plate is empty? Okay. Was reminded of this when visiting family recently and realized it was my introduction to malicious compliance. Not particularly exciting, but was result of being a smart-arsed lil shit as a kid. Dad had a rule of you couldn't leave the table if you still had food on your plate. Didn't matter if you didn't like it. We don't waste food in this house. Quote, yay for the resulting weight issues and disordered eating I still have issues with in my 30s. Well, one time, there was something I detested on the plate and there was just no way I could stomach choking it down. So, I asked if I could have a pass. Something that was rarely allowed for truly hated food. Nope. I'd annoyed him earlier, so now I had to follow the rules. I happened to know this was a food Dad also didn't like and he simply hadn't served himself any when dishing up dinner. But was something Mom and at least one brother liked. Hence the existence of it around the meal. Mom had simply forgotten I didn't like it or muddled plates serving, which is why I had any. So, I stood up, reached over and scraped my plate onto his. There. My plate is empty. And left. Mom stood up for me saying that I followed the rule, and that nowhere had my dad specified that the food had to be eaten. Dad stopped forcing us to eat anything we didn't like after that, but was still a pain over not wasting food, so we had to offer unliked items around the table or, if safe, give it to the dog. He was a man who got change from a penny. Haha, my mom told me that when I was a baby. Dad was trying to feed me liver baby food. Why that was a thing, I don't know. Anyway, I kept spitting it out and he was getting annoyed. Until he tried it and spit it out too. No more liver for me lol. I still hate liver of any kind it to this day. My dad tried that on my brother and me for a few years. We were both really bad about refusing to eat foods we didn't like. Which pretty much included every food we had never tried by default. He'd declare we were eating whatever was prepared and make us sit at the table until we ate it or bedtime came. And then my grandma heard about that when I was about 12 or so. She actually did not come down on him one bit. She didn't say a word to him at all. But she told me about every food my dad wouldn't eat. And there are a bunch. My picky little self had no idea until then, but I was malicious enough to decide these were my new favorite foods even if it killed me. The one I got the most enjoyment from was boiled okra. Dad likes it fried and so do I. But boiled skeeves him out to this day. Dunno why. But it does. Until he was grown and moved out of my grandparents' house. If Grandma was cooking boiled okra, he would stand at the kitchen door and talk to her while she cooked. This was very unusual for him. She eventually figured out he was watching to see if she used the spoon to stir something else. If she did, he would skip the meal and go to bed hungry. So I started requesting his hated foods a couple of times per week. Mom was happy I was asking for wholesome foods instead of junk. So it all got cooked. The rule about eating some of everything died a quiet death that summer. Not really your issue, since you found a way around it. But the Clean Plate Club has ruined many a person's intuition for fullness and has made a lot of people sick and have bad relationships with food. Your body is not a trash can. Overeating is just as wasteful, if not more so, than saving it for another person or trashing it. When my kid started getting picky, we make sure to serve her 3 kid-sized bites of the thing she probably wouldn't like, and she had to try it, along with other food. No sense in making dinner time torture for everyone. My dad had the same rule. Starving kids in India, song and dance. Lasted up until Mom made vegetable stew. I called it garbage stew. I hated it. Still do. I told Dad I couldn't eat it, but he demanded that I cleaned my plate. So I did, holding my breath and shoving it down as fast as I could. I cleaned my plate. And then it came back up. Fast, so fast that I didn't have time to get away from the dinner table. Needless to say, no one cleaned their plate that night. Best of all, Dad stopped making us clean our plates. He never did stop telling us about the starving kids though. My mom used to do the same thing. Even forcing me to eat cabbage, which I'm allergic to and makes me violently ill. Which she thought I was faking so I wouldn't have to eat cabbage. Go figure. Peas. Bane of my existence. Although my relatives tried to force me to eat them, my mother did not even make them for dinner. I said to her, when I was an adult, that I was glad she didn't like peas either. She said she did like peas. I asked her why she never served them, and she said, because I knew you didn't like them and you ate all the rest of the types of vegetables anyway, including spinach. Blew my mind. Love you, Mom. 2 hearts, parents. Stop forcing people to eat stuff they don't like. When I was a kid, my mom often made a dish that was my dad's favorite, but it was so vile to me that I would gag at the smell. We also had a no leaving the table until plate is clean rule. But we also had a table with a lip on the underside, and chairs that also had small spaces underneath the seat to hide stuff. So I would sit down at the table and tear my napkin into 4s. Then muster every bit of my strength, put a piece of that disgusting slimy pink sludge meat in my mouth and promptly spit it into a piece of my napkin. Fill the napkin and stuff it into the table or chair nooks. After dinner I would collect the napkins and flush the bites down the toilet. Thankfully no one ever caught on. My dad was like this too. My mom served canned and frozen veggies that she'd boiled into mush. I had to eat everything to be excused. He would get angry when I refused to eat something and sometimes smacked my hands with this wooden piece of our napkin holder. So I used to hide the veggies in the potted plants or toss them back in the serving dish when no one was looking. I would balance green beans on a ledge I found under the table. I hid veggies in my socks and then flushed them down the toilet. Strict parents create really sneaky children. The rule me and my sister had growing up was, you don't have to eat if you don't want to. But this is what is being served for dinner. I'm not a line cook. So if we didn't want to eat it, that was fine. But we would be going hungry if we didn't eat something from dinner. Mom usually did an entree, a grain side, and a veggie side. This continued until we were old enough to cook unsupervised. So like 14 to 15. And then Mom would say, the kitchen is closed until after dinner time. If you're still hungry after dinner, you can make something for yourself. These seemed like reasonable rules to me. My mom used to say the same, so I'd be sat at the dinner table until way past everyone else finished dinner and felt so guilty when I tried to quietly scrape food into the bin at 9 p.m. I still struggle to throw food away in my own home. I hated anything tomato when I was a kid, and one day my mom made tomato soup for lunch. I told her I couldn't eat it, but my parents made me sit there for a while, then dismissed me. At dinner everyone else was served meatloaf or something, but I was served my now cold tomato soup. By then I was so hungry I tried it, but the texture, taste and cold temperatures immediately made me ill, and I vomited red soup all over myself and the tablecloth, so my parents were a little more understanding after that incident. I was still expected to eat everything on my plate, but I was never forced to eat anything I didn't like again. Unless I was at my grandpa's house, so that must be where that rule came from. I finally just taught myself to try to swallow my food so fast I couldn't taste it, kinda like taking a pill. Lima beans. I detest them to the very depths of my soul. I would rub them in my hair before eating them. This has never made sense to me. How is forcing someone to eat something they don't want and don't like not wasting food? I hate how parents force feed their kids. All you have to do is offer healthy foods for your kids and let them decide how much to eat. Making kids eat every last bite is why 3 of my cousins are now overweight, because they always had to eat what their mom plated, and it was always like a fucking adult serving. My parents didn't do this that I can remember. But my grandparents did. In fact, my mom would make sure that if my sister or I didn't like something, she either wouldn't make it or would alter it so it wouldn't bother us as much. Stewed tomatoes in my case. They look like a damned blood clot to me. Mom would dice them into tiny pieces so they wouldn't gross me out so much. I absolutely, positively hate cottage cheese, and my grandfather one time told me I had to dish myself some, or he would. I fished the tiniest curd out of the container I could find. Just one. Grandma laughed and said I followed the rule. My mom used to do this too. Until she added a cherry on top of, "There's starving children in the world that etc." My reply as I stood and walked away, "Perfect. Send them my meal then." For context, I was 8 and being forced to eat smoked cod. There was brief period of my childhood where the rule was, if you don't finish your dinner, you'll finish it for breakfast. Thankfully this did not last very long, and as I got into my preteens it became somewhat of a joke about how my siblings and I were picky about different things. My rule with my children and grandchildren was that they try at least one mouthful of everything on their plate. If they still didn't like it they could leave it, but there was nothing else. I was forced to eat shitty veggies, liver, cod roe and other vile things as a child. Sitting gagging with a mouthful of food you can't bring yourself to swallow is no fun. I blame that childhood shit for my poor relationship with food. I am fond of saying that as an adult I don't have to ever eat something I dislike. But I will try anything once. I'm also fond of having 2 Mars bars or Snickers for my supper. If my kids didn't like something it came right off the menu because my husband would try to pull this crap. After a few years he started asking why I never made quite a few of our favorite foods any longer. I explained that I wasn't going to torture my children with food. Since he insisted on there being no compromise, that I no longer cook foods that any of the kids disliked. So he personally lost many of his favorite meals. I meant it too. If 1 kid out of 3 didn't like something it was gone. I literally almost died when I was 7 because of a deep aversion to Brussels sprouts. Almost choked to death trying to minimize the disgusting factor. For me it was milk. I recall at times sitting at the table for hours refusing to drink it as a little kid. Later in life I took an allergy test through a lab the doctor wanted me to do and found I was allergic to milk. Unfortunately I didn't get to rub it in my parents' faces as they had passed away. The funny part of this is I never turned down ice cream or chocolate milk. I guess it was because it was at least more pleasurable to eat.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Eracast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.